This is not the way it was supposed to be. Patrick Floyd Garrett. I'm telling you, I went down the rabbit hole. Oh, this here's Jumpin' Jack Flash, and that is Bosco P. Coltrane. Got a herd of cows, came to check on us. This is not the way it was supposed to be. All I wanted to do, go ahead and walk right underneath my mule. All I wanted to do was to have a destination and ride Bonnie to it. You see, I was on YouTube, and there's this channel called Sidetrack Adventures. And he makes these videos. He doesn't ride a mule or anything, but he goes places and, you know, tells kind of an interesting story about the location he goes to. And he had this one video that popped up on my screen. And it's of a place where they killed Pat Garrett, Sheriff Pat Garrett. And most of us don't know. If you don't know about Sheriff Pat Garrett, he's the guy who is sheriff in Lincoln County. He's the one who killed Billy the Kid.
Sheriff Pat Garrett. Adios.
Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Kind of in a cowardly manner, I believe. He was hiding in a room in the shadows, and Billy the Kid came in and he shot him. Anyway, so I found out by watching that guy's video that that place is really, really close to my house. It's not that far away, but it's in town. It's oh, Jack, Jack, get out. It's in a piece of public land, state lease land, but it's between the city of Las Cruces and a little housing development up there. Anyway, so I thought it'd be pretty cool, good place to ride Bonnie. You know, there might be a little more distractions than out here in the middle of nowhere, and I need to get her used to some distractions. And my grandson lives real close to there. So I told my grandson, I said, why don't you come up and you can fly the drone and film me a little bit? So that's what we did. And I thought, I'd done a little bit of research prior to going up there, and I found kind of what I thought was the trail to where they killed him. And Sheriff Pat Garrett and a guy named Adamson were riding in a buggy, and a guy named Wayne Brazel, I keep wanting to say Brazil, but it's Brazel, he was riding, he had met up with them, and they were all supposed to meet in Las Cruces, and he met up with them. Brazel had leased a ranch from Pat Garrett, and from what I can understand, what everybody says is Wayne Brazel, instead of putting cattle on the ranch, he put goats on there. He put like 1,200 head of goats. And the lease agreement was that this Brazel was gonna pay Pat Garrett like 4 or 5 calves a year and a colt out of one of his mares. That was the lease payment. But he didn't do that. He brought in a whole bunch of goats. He brought in 1,200 head, or he thought, and then he miscounted, and there were 1,600 head. Pat Garrett was trying to break the lease. So they made a deal with this guy. It gets real confusing. That's one of the problems. Is he made a deal with this guy, Jim Miller, which a guy's name is Deacon Jim Miller. And he was a killer. I mean, he was a paid assassin. Go on. He was a paid assassin. This mule is as bad as one of these dogs. Keeps trying to get in my lap. This Jim Miller was supposed to buy the goats, and I don't know, it gets real confusing. Anyway, so I just thought I'd ride to where they killed Pat Garrett. They got a little monument there and a plaque and everything. Good place to get Bonnie out. Don't. Is that necessary? So, I found the buggy road, and I don't know if this is the right road. It could have gone anywhere down through. But I took more or less the same route that they took down to the site, and I rode Bonnie. So Pat Garrett lived in Las Cruces. He had those 2 ranches, and he was having financial difficulties. The story goes that they were arguing because he had a deal to get rid of those 1,200 goats, but that Wayne Brazel had miscounted, said there were 1,600 goats. And he wasn't going to get off the ranch or something like that. Anyway, they stopped right there at that location, and Pat Garrett had a shotgun, some kind of fold-over shotgun. I'll put a little picture of it right here. And as the story goes, Brazel, or Sheriff Pat Garrett, said, "I'll get you off of it one way or another." And he started to jump out of the buggy and grab that shotgun. He had it in a scabbard next to the buggy seat to grab it. Brazel had a hidden pistol, pulled it out and shot Garrett. Garrett went in, the hole went in the back of his head and came out above his right eyeball. Shot him in the back of the head. Adamson was taking a leak and looking the other direction. When he heard the shot, he turned around, seen what happened. Then Brazel shot Garrett again in the chest. Dead. Right away, Brazel went into town, turned himself in. Adamson went with him. They told the same story. So the coroner went out, or the investigators went out and quit. Coroner went out and investigators went out and they checked the body and this and that. And supposedly there's a couple Isaacs. I know some Isaacs. They still live in that area. Back a long time ago, they had a ranch next to there. They had heard the shots and they rode over there. And they beat the coroner and everything over there. And they met and then they stayed there. And then I guess that the coroner, the investigators, I don't know. I'm not very good on this story. I just started into it. And they ended up going back to the location later on and cut across into a rock and put it there. That's how they know it was there. Now there's a regular little monument there, as you'll see in this video. But there's so much more to the story. So much more. Somehow this Deacon Jones, or not Deacon, Deacon Miller, they called him a deacon because he went to church all the time, but he was a paid killer. He'd killed a lot of people, been paid for it. They call it a paid assassin, I guess. He was involved in it. I think he was the guy who was supposed to buy the goats. Adamson was involved in it because I think he was the one that was dealing with everybody. And he was just a cowboy out there. And they say that Wayne Brazel, the guy who had leased the ranch from Garrett, that he was kind of simple-minded, that he wasn't just the sharpest tool in the shed, you know what I mean? And they had brought, and this led to something else. They had brought Garrett into Las Cruces, and Garrett he wasn't good with money. He was broke. I think he gambled and stuff, and he probably had some other activities that he did. He just wasn't good with money. And I think he was kind of a bully, and, you know, one of those sheriff guys that just kind of, you know what I mean, kind of, you know, uses the authority to his own benefit. So anyway, they brought Sheriff Garrett in to investigate the disappearance of Albert J. Fountain. That goes into a whole nother rabbit hole that I climbed into. So all this time, while I was trying to all I thought is I'll make a video about riding Bonnie down to this monument where Sheriff Pat Garrett was killed and kind of tell the story. Led to other things. And that's why I'm out here now. This is another training session for Bonnie. You'll probably see this video later on. But I had to explain this because there's so much more going on. But anyway, Albert Fountain, J. Fountain, him and his I think he had an 8-year-old son, and they were investigating and going to prosecute cattle rustlers. And they were coming back from, matter of fact, right over there. They were coming back from Alamogordo or Capitan, Lincoln, or whatever, coming back this way. They'd spent the night a couple places, then they came over and completely disappeared. No, they found the place called Chalk Hill, where his buggy, well, or his back, what they call it, his buggy, or whatever you call it, his horse-drawn carriage, where it was, and there was a pool of blood. And so they determined he was dead, but they never found any signs of his 8-year-old son. So but they had seen the guys that he was after was Oliver Lee and James Gilliland, which is really funny. I've roped with the descendants of James Gilliland. Matter of fact, the guy's name is James Gilliland. But they were all ranchers in that area. So you think about it. So Pat Garrett was brought in. He bought a couple ranches out there. He had all these other ranches in that, close to the same area. They brought Garrett in to investigate that. But Oliver Lee and James Gilliland, they were found not guilty. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories that go with the killing of Sheriff Pat Garrett. I mean, some say that assassin, that he was paid to come and that he was hiding out there somewhere and that he shot Pat Garrett there. I don't think that's true because they have a record of him being somewhere else, I think, at that time. I know how all these guys are. I've been around these, everybody, people are tribal. I think these ranchers out here had Pat Garrett go in there and they probably weren't very fond of him. He bought those ranches and then they probably talked that Brazel into bringing in a bunch of goats. And then they figured out this plan where they could get him and talk that Brazel into killing him. I think Brazel was goaded into killing him. He's kind of simple-minded. What's more than that is later on, that Brazel, he married some lady, and there was Cox. W.W. Cox, he was involved in it somehow too. Somehow Brazel married some lady and then she got pregnant and had a kid or anything, but he left. He left them. And he was never seen again. He disappeared. No record whatsoever of where he went. Some people, or kind of oral tradition or whatever, said he went down to South America or something like that. But he was kind of simple-minded anyway. He never said anything about killing Pat Garrett again, and he disappeared off the face of the earth. Albert Fountain, he disappeared. His son disappeared. Pat Garrett ended up killed. I think there's a lot more to this story than people know. Dadgum, what was that? Dadgum, what was that? Jack. I'll put links down in the description to some guys who tell the story a lot better than I do. It's just interesting to me because I'm riding all this country where all this took place. There was also an Albert Fall that was involved in it. And he was like mortal enemies with Albert Fountain. They were just like political rivalries. And this Fall, Albert Fall, he's the one who defended Wayne Brazel. He's also the one who defended Oliver Lee and James Gilliland that were arrested for the disappearance of Albert J. Fountain and his son. And then through all this, you got the W.W. Cox, that he's the one who sold the ranches to Pat Garrett. But they claim he didn't have anything to do with it. He was pretty neutral in all this. But I can only imagine if you were cattle rustlers or you were doing some, and Adamson. This is another thing, that Adamson guy that was there and was a witness to the shooting. He didn't see the actual shot to the back of the head, but he seen the second shot. He was taking a leak. And then also rumors were that Pat Garrett, that it looked like the shotgun was placed next to Pat Garrett when he was laying on the ground dead, and that his breeches were undone. So him and Adamson and him were taking a leak, and Brazel shot Garrett in the back of the head. Garrett was such a well-known bad dude, you know, tough guy. He was like 6'5". They say he beat the hell out of people a lot. He also got his ass whipped a lot too. It's just things I read. I'm telling you, I went down the rabbit hole. So anyway, me and Bonnie had a pretty good ride. We went and seen Pat Garrett's murder site, rode back, had a few problems, but other than that, not bad, nothing bad. Oh, Adamson, I forgot Adamson. See, this is not a rehearsed thing. This is just me talking. Adamson was later on arrested and convicted of smuggling Chinese into the United States. All these guys, there's just so much going on in this area at that time period. And this was between, like, I'll put it right here, 18-something and 1908 or 19... Sheriff Pat Garrett was killed on February 29th, 1908. And this is not even including all the stuff that happened with the Lincoln County War and Billy the Kid and all that stuff that went on over there. What's up, Jumpin' Jack Flash? So anyway, there's a guy who did a talk from the Doniana Historical Society, and I'll put a link to his video. It's like a podcast. I'll put a link to his video in the description. And then also there's another guy that kind of gets way out there. He's a real conspiracy theorist. I'll put a link to his podcast, or it's a YouTube podcast. I'll put a link to it in the description too. If you really want to go down the rabbit hole like I did, go down it. Maybe we'll have a live show and we can discuss it, if you're interested in it. I thought it was pretty cool. All right, so there's the highline wires. I'll just get out my OnX Maps on my phone and I'll know whether I need to go to the left or to the right. I don't know. I think I hit the road on and off, but I got down in the arroyo. It zigzags in and out of here, so there's no telling, you know, from that long ago where all went. I'm sure even over a period of time, it's changed directions many, many times. It says it's further down that way. It's already getting hot. Let's see if this little thing is right. Let's head that direction. It's a highline wire down there, but it's a different kind. Ah, let's go. There it is, right down there, right by that telephone pole. Patrick Floyd Garrett, Alameda Arroyo. On this site, famed New Mexico lawman Patrick Floyd Garrett met his death on February 29, 1908, while traveling to Las Cruces from his home just east of San Augustine Pass. Garrett is known worldwide for killing Billy the Kid. Garrett was formerly sheriff of Doniana County and Lincoln County. William and Emmett Isaacs marked this site in 1908. William and Emmett Isaacs marked this site in 1908 with a stone carved with a cross. The cement was added to the marker November 6, 1965 by Hudson and Morrell and John Griggs. I don't see no rock with a... Oh, it's right there, I bet. Right there. Right there, maybe. Kind of interesting. That's pretty cool. I guess he was coming down this arroyo. Maybe that's where the buggy trail was, or the trail was. I bet it weaved in and out of these hills, but you can see how far they came. His ranch was on the other side of those mountains over there. Those dark blue ones way back there in the background. That's where his ranch was. And they were riding in a buggy. I bet it was miserable riding through this country in a buggy. I think there's a lot more to the story than what they share. A little different style of riding for me. But it was good. It was fun. I'm glad I seen it. After I seen that video, I knew I had to go see it, and I didn't want to just drive in a buggy out there. I wanted to ride my mule to it. So it was good for Bonnie. She got to see some different country, and anyway, it's a good day. Wind's starting to blow. Got out just in time.